Today we're going to look at the course of the war. A lot was going on during the war, and there's not really, we're not going to cover most things, okay? So it's kind of a down and dirty. All I'm really giving you are the important battles. In some cases, these are the turning point battles of the war. Many other battles took place, many other important battles took place, but we're just going to hit the high points on this, okay? So this is by no means a comprehensive look at all of the battles of World War II. I'm also not necessarily going to go in order, so make sure you refer back to trying to find it. Make sure you refer back to the timeline, and again, if you will look at the highlighted areas on that, you can kind of see, and you can see where we're going to start here. Yesterday we got to our declaration of war on Japan, and here you can begin to see the battles as they kind of, and you can see the true order of it and how it all fits in together, okay? So just kind of refer back to that if you want to see how it plays out. Like I said, this is not in order, okay? So the first two are related, North Africa and the Italian campaign. When the war begins, you know that France fell early on in 1940. And then Germany began to attack Britain with the Battle of Britain. And at this point, it's really just Britain against the Germans. And in this time, they're going to turn their back on the Soviet Union. There was that non-aggression pact, and Germany is going to attack the Soviet Union and invade, so that by the time the United States is involved in the war, you have only Britain and the Soviet Union standing against the Germans, and there is no one to fight him in the West. Yes, there's Britain, but Britain is not on the mainland of Europe, and France has fallen. So really, all of Germany's, or their major war effort is focused on the Eastern Front, and that is the Soviet Union. So Stalin is desperate for some help. He is desperate for a second front to open in Europe. And the Allies are very much aware, Britain and the United States are very much aware that that is not going to be easy. And it's something that's going to take a huge effort. It's not anything that can be done in the short time period that he needs it done in, now. So what they're going to do is attempt to ease that situation, and their plan is to invade Italy. But the problem with invading Italy is that Germany is encamped in North Africa. So to kind of ease the way for the invasion of Italy, they are going to go about Operation Torch, which is the North African campaign. And again, pretty short battle in terms of days. It would have had more time, in planning. But November 8th through 10th in 1942, and the British and the American troops are going to invade North Africa. And again, it's not what the Soviets want. And the Soviets are pretty convinced that Britain and the United States are doing it on purpose, that they want the Soviet Union to be defeated, but not necessarily true. So we're going to work at getting the Germans out of North Africa to kind of help us along the lines, and to give us a foothold into the Middle East too. Now you'll notice here that not too long after this campaign, after the North African campaign, we began the Italian campaign, but look how long it lasts. Italy was a tough nut to crack. It was not easy. This was one of the costliest battles in the West. Just looking at the number of people killed and wounded. But again, this is a compromise to the Soviet Union, to Stalin. It's not really taking much away from them. It's not really diverting Germany as they needed, but it does take Italy out of a lot of that, and Italy has to focus on their own survival during this time. Okay, we are anyway. We'll get to the second front in a minute. At the end of this, you'll notice this comes toward the end of the war. We do win. We are going to be successful in liberating Italy from Mussolini. He will be captured and imprisoned. He will also be rescued. He was in a prison in the Alps, of all things, and the Germans landed a plane in the Alps and rescued, reassumes power. And eventually it's going to be the Italians themselves that overthrow him. And I'm going to zoom down here and I'm going to show you just the only two pictures I have here. And this is a picture of what the Italians, this is not what the Allies did to Mussolini. This is what the Italians did to Mussolini. This is Mussolini here. And this is his mistress. And you can see her there in a bigger close-up. And these are his military aides that were with him. They are going to be shot, and then they're going to be hung out publicly for the crowds to see. I will make a comment here about his mistress. You'll notice that she is covered because she is wearing a dress, and the Italians were very concerned about her modesty. They've killed her, but they're concerned about their modesty. So before they hung her by her feet, they did tuck her dress in a way that would not show more than needed to be seen. Okay. All right. So the Italian campaign is going to be an Allied victory again, as was North Africa. In the East, the biggest battle that, and it's a turning point, is the Battle of Stalingrad. And again, look at the time period. This is not a short battle. If we look up here at North Africa, it was a matter of days. But you start looking at these campaigns and this battle right here, and these are very long battles. Russia's a tough country to invade, and Napoleon found that out, but so does Hitler. And you have to be careful when you invade Russia because of the weather. It gets very cold, and the weather is probably the biggest protection that they have. And they're going to invade in, of all times, August is summer, but it's, you know, it's not much longer for you don't have much longer for the warm weather. In parts of Russia, it begins to snow sometimes in October. Now, snowing in October is fine in that it is still warm enough to where it melts. The problem is, though, that you have snow and it melts and it gets gunked up, and so you got mud, and then it keeps snowing a little bit and melting, and so you muddy the fields literally, and you've got these heavy tanks and these heavy trucks going, and so they're going to get bogged down. And the other problem is that when they get to Russia, they are going to literally be able to go right through Russia. They have a lot of success fighting their way through Russia, and you're going to have this really long supply line. And then the weather hits you. And yes, you start in October having snow, but you get into November and you begin to have the freezing weather. It is so cold there that their engine blocks freeze. They have problems with fuel because their supply line is so long. They're not going to get supplies, and I don't just mean food. I also mean supplies to fix the tanks and to work on the trucks, and so just general maintenance, and so things fall apart. But they're going to keep on working in there, and I have a lot of problems with the Soviet army, but things are getting ready to turn around for them. They're going to make it to Stalingrad, and Stalingrad, of course, is named after Joseph Stalin. He sees this as his city, and he tells the army, You are not allowed to surrender. You are not allowed to retreat. And it's more than just saving it because it's his city. There's also the point that you have the oil fields just behind it. And so we cannot let the Germans get to the oil fields. And that is what ultimately Hitler needs. And so the Soviets have been told, no retreat, no surrender. And so have the Germans. Hitler's pretty much let it be known, don't give up, don't stop fighting. And so what you have here are two immovable sides, and it is considered to be the largest and bloodiest battle in the history of warfare. 2.2 million people involved, but of the 2.2, 1.7 to 2 million killed, wounded, or captured. Y'all listen, that is, I don't have my calculator out, but you're probably looking at like a 90% casualty rate. It is immense. This is going to be especially costly for Germany. And part of that is because their supply lines had been cut off at this point, and they're trapped. Hitler's not going to let anybody leave, and so you've got to replace the soldiers from the Western Front, and really it can't be done. And so what's going to happen is, even though they weren't supposed to give in and give up, the Germans are going to be forced to retreat. And what you see is, with this much reduced force, they are basically running back to Germany with the Soviets on their heels. And you'll notice this comes in February of 1943, okay? And we only really have about a year, a little over a year, before we have D-Day. But this is the turning point on the Eastern Front, okay? From this point on, the Germans are in constant retreat in the east, okay? So in November of 1943, you had the Tehran Conference, and this was attended by the big three, U.S., Britain, and the Soviet Union. And this is a strategy meeting, and this is where the United States and Britain agreed to open that second front. Now, again, this is not an easy task. This will take a long time to plan, and they've been looking at it, and they've been putting things together. It's not like they started the planning now. But they've got to decide, how can we invade? Where will we invade? What kind of invasion will it be? How long do we, what all do we need? And so they decide that the best place to invade is near southern France, and on the beaches of Normandy. There's 5 beaches in Normandy. And this is occupied France, and so that's part of it. We have to deal with the Germans, and believe it or not, they have attempted an invasion, and this is why they know it's going to take a big undertaking. So they're going to launch it from Britain, but you got a lot of spies in Britain. You've got a lot of German spies in Britain. You got a lot of people who are looking at. You got planes flying overhead looking at things. You've got all kinds of things going on. So how do you hide this big of an invasion from the Germans? And that's exactly what you have to do. How do you hide it? I mean, they're just across the channel. And so some of the most amazing spy tricks, I guess you could say, are going to take place during this time. They're going to set up a fake base in northern Europe, northern England, and it's going to have a real general. I believe it was General MacArthur, and they're going to have tanks. It's going to, like, if a German plane flew overhead, it looks like they've got tanks there, and really they're just rubber. They're blow-up tanks, and they've got personnel walking around, and it was an amazing thing. You also have to kind of make it easy for the Germans to feel like you're right, and so they've made it kind of obvious. You've got this northern base, this fake base in northern England, and they're trying to fool Hitler into thinking that it's going to come, that they're going to invade through the north, northern France, up in that area around Calais. Rommel, who had, he was actually in charge, he was the German commander in North Africa. He had escaped North Africa and came back, and he's trying his best to tell Hitler, it's coming from Normandy. That's the place that makes the most sense. That's the place where you have the best landing zone. But Hitler's convinced. Another way that they tried to convince Hitler that it was coming through northern France was, it's kind of brilliant. They went into a morgue in Britain and they got a body, and they dressed the body as a pilot. They gave him an identity. They gave him a past. He had pictures of and letters from a girlfriend, and they gave him some secret papers. And those secret papers just happened to say that the invasion was going to happen through the north of France. And then this plane with this pilot is going to come down in the English Channel. The Germans are going to get the body of this pilot, and that's how they're going to get that. So the whole thing was a setup, and so the British and the Americans have done an amazing job of fooling them. And the attack was supposed to start on June 5th of 1944, excuse me, but it was raining, did not have good conditions, and so they're going to back it up a day, and so D-Day is June 6th of 1944. This might be one of the biggest or the biggest occupation or landing forces in history. They're going to invade the beaches of Normandy, and they're going to land 500,000 troops just within days. I believe it was within a month they had landed over 1 million troops on shore, and they are going to fight their way from Normandy all the way up to Paris. They are going to liberate Paris, and the Germans are going to be out by August 25th of 1944, and then they're going to begin their massive campaign to go to Germany. So Germany now is facing constant retreat on both the east and the west. Okay, France is back in the fight. You also have the Soviet Union coming from that way, but also, you know, a little bit that they're doing in Italy. And things are looking bad by December of 1944. Things are looking really bad for Germany. He's down to his last 250,000 reserve troops. Many of these are young boys. They are or older men. These are all that's left after all the fighting has been done. And so what's going to happen is you're going to get toward Christmas of 1944, and the Americans, the British, and the French are coming from the west, and it's a big force, and so Hitler's going to do the only thing he really can do, and he's going to throw those reserve troops at them, and he is going to create a bulge in their line. It's like a 60-mile bulge, so we're not talking a small thing. And if you'll look at my cursor, you can see here was the line. It's just a line of troops, and then the Germans are going to kind of push this way, and that line is going to back up about 60 miles. Okay, and it creates a bulge in the Allied line. I wish I had a map here. And eventually, the Americans, the Allies, are going to be able to push their way back, and they're going to fight their way into Berlin at that point. And that's going to set us up for the division of Berlin, and it's also going to set up a lot of those tensions that the United States and the USSR are going to have, the Soviet Union are going to have after the war. So you can see some of the beginning Cold War tensions starting here. Not long after the end of the Battle of the Bulge, you have the Yalta Conference. This is in the Soviet Union, and again, it is attended by the big three. That would be Britain, United States, and the Soviet Union. And they're going to continue to discuss military strategy and post-war policy. Okay. Pretty much at this point, Germany is defeated. So what do we keep doing? What are we going to do next? And so Stalin is going to restate his promise to declare war on Japan after the defeat, not the feat, but after the defeat of Germany. So we know Germany's going to be defeated, and then the United States has to turn its full attention to Japan. We have asked for help. The Soviet Union had told us in the past that they would help us, but got to get Hitler first. So He restates his promise to declare war on Japan after the defeat of Germany. Here's where some problems come in. It's this next part. Stalin's going to also agree to allow free elections and a democratic government in Eastern Europe. He's going to say that's not what I said. The Soviets, I mean, the British and the Americans are like, yeah, you did. This is going to become a major issue after the war. This whole idea of democratic governments. Stalin says, I didn't put it like that. And Britain and the United States said, yeah, you did. So there's some Cold War tension. There's the birth of some of that Cold War tension. Roosevelt and Churchill also agree that the Soviet Union would keep land in Poland. Again, they think this is temporary, and Stalin's not thinking that at all. And reparations were discussed too. So the end of the war is right there, and on May 8th, 1945, Germany is going to surrender. I will also say that at these conferences, the big three are pretty much stating there will not be a conditional surrender. It will be unconditional. There will be no deals. You will surrender, and you will surrender everything to us. And this was for both Germany and Japan. So that's the only kind of surrender they would take. And on May 8th, 1945, you have your unconditional surrender from Germany. This is called VE Day, Victory in Europe. Hitler had just committed suicide. I do think had Hitler held on, they would have held on, or at least tried. I also think maybe Hitler would have been assassinated before too much longer. That's Europe. What's going on in the Pacific? Well, in the Pacific initially, after we joined the war in 1941, things are not going well at all. The Japanese seem to be running all over us. We can't stop them. We can't, and they just keep defeating us. And there's so many battles in the Pacific, the Battle of the Coral Sea. We're just really going to look at a few here, okay? The Battle of Midway is a huge turning point for us. One of the reasons we were able to win this battle is we had broken their codes. And we knew where all of their ships were. And we were also able to hear when this attack was going to happen and where it was going to happen, and we planned our own ambush. So just the technological breakthrough of their codes, breaking their codes, helped us here. This is going to this victory, this U.S. victory, is going to force Japan to fight a more defensive war strategy. They're not going to be on the offensive anymore. This is going to stop their advance in the Pacific, and they're pretty much going to be on constant retreat at this point. We'll also say that we did major damage to them at Midway, to the point where they could not recoup their losses. Losses not just of men, but also of ships. I believe we sank 2 aircraft carriers, which is pretty significant, and we may have damaged, I think we damaged 1 or 2 more. So we did significant damage to them here. The next I have 2 battles here together. I've got Iwo Jima with Okinawa. These are part of the island hopping strategy, okay? And these are 2 major battles, and our point with island hopping is we are just hopping from one island to another to get closer to Japan. We are going to invade Japan. We are going to bomb them, but we are going to invade. That is our whole strategy right now, to invade Japan. But we need to have a island. We need to have a base close by, and so we're trying to get closer. Okinawa is really what's going to put us within the distance that we need to get there. I'm going to say, though, that the Battle of Iwo Jima and Okinawa were extremely costly, and Americans, the Pacific War was so much different than the European War. We're fighting a different kind of enemy. And by a different kind of enemy, I just mean that the Japanese have a very different culture than Westerners do. And a military type culture, one that celebrated military but also celebrated honor, and the idea that surrender was shameful. So we were fighting a people that did not believe in surrender. And they would literally fight to the death. And I don't know if we'll watch the video, but there is, as Okinawa was falling, you can see a Japanese soldier. He's walking across a cliff, and he gets to the end. He never slows down. He never looks back. He never shows hesitation, and he just walks right over the end of the cliff. And you just have people who won't give up. They won't surrender. They will kill themselves. They will commit suicide, but they will not give up. And what happens is that we begin to realize that taking Japan is not going to be like taking France. It's not going to be the same thing, the liberation of France. The people in Japan are not going to come out and be happy that we're there. They're going to fight us. And as we're preparing for that, Japan is preparing also. And you've got the people who live there. And by the people who are still there, I mean the elderly, the young, girls and boys, people who are too infirm to fight, whatever reason, they're getting ready for us. And they're using anything they have. Knives, yes, some who might have guns, but garden tools, sticks. They're gonna fight against us, and they are not going to give in. And so at this point, FDR has passed away, and the new president is Truman. And Truman has not really been kept much in the loop about the war effort, what's going on. And he's very much tough-minded and believes in the unconditional surrender of Japan. And so what the Army commanders are going to do is they're going to come to him and say, we got a new weapon. And it's an amazing weapon. And it's a big weapon. And our choices are possibly losing 500,000 Americans or 500,000 casualties. It didn't really say Americans, but 500,000 casualties were what the Army was estimating what the cost would be if we invaded Japan. Or we can drop the bomb and we can lose no Americans. So Truman's going to decide on the bomb. And 2 are going to be dropped. The first one is on August 6th, 1945. And that is going to be dropped on Hiroshima. Estimated around 80,000 people are killed. The Japanese do not surrender. And so 3 days later, on August 9th, they're going to drop a smaller bomb on Nagasaki, and it is around 60,000 are going to be killed. And again, you can look and see 129,000 people here overall. And I'm just giving you a roundabout number, but it's a big deal. You've got all of these Japanese dead, and you have lost not one American soldier. This would be an example of total war. We talked about total war with the Civil War. Is it right? Is it wrong? We have never dropped, there has never been another atomic bomb dropped in war, a time of war. I'm also going to tell you that this is going to be a weapon that changes warfare forever, changes the way we fight warfare. We don't want the other side to drop the bomb, so we always pull back from the end of that. And we can get into a debate. Is it right? Is it wrong? Regardless, the next day the Japanese leaders decided that they would surrender. I've got here August 10th is VJ Day. Your book says, and other sources say August 14th. Regardless, just know that VJ Day is Victory in Japan, and it comes after. I usually use August 10th as VJ Day, but the book that we'll use says August 14th. So either one of those will be fine. I would like a question. If you have anything that you would like to ask, please put that on the sheet of paper. But the real thing I'm going to grade for today is the issue of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What do you think? Should we have dropped that bomb or should we not have? And I want a yes or no, but I also want you to tell me why. Why should we have, or why should we never have dropped that bomb? And so I want you to give me some detail on that in several sentences, okay? So don't just give me a yes. I'm not going to give you credit for just a yes, okay? But again, I would love to answer your questions tomorrow. So please write any questions down or anything that you want more information on.